Bert! Get him! Yeah! Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. Wow, it is the 7th of December, and man, I got a busy January coming up, busy February, busy March. This is going to be a lot. This 2024 is setting up to be freaking awesome. Couple things I've got going. Well, I've got my trip to Kansas coming up here at the middle of the month, and I hope there's a couple of my listeners that have already reached out to me. Hopefully, we can get together and chase a quail. If not, we can get together and have a beer. Also just committed to going to Nashville to the National Wild Turkey Federation. I'm told that there is a bunch of dogs, like Purina is one of the Longbeard sponsors. I didn't realize, I've heard that this is a great convention. I didn't realize how big it is, and it's going to be in Nashville, and I was like, heck yeah. Now, I'm not going to have a booth there, but I'm going to check it out. I'm going to be able to walk the floor. I'm sure I'm going to see a lot of people that I know, a lot of sponsors that I know, all that kind of stuff. But the intention will be, like, if this is as good a show as I hear, the next year I'll be doing the NWTF show and Pheasant Fest, which is coming up the 1st of March. Now, Pheasant Fest is going to be freaking awesome. A bunch of my friends are going to be there helping me with the Hunting Dog Podcast area. We're not going to call it the Village because it's a little broke up by aisles. But my truck and another truck with four-wheel campers is going to be in a whole giant area. Right next to that's going to be me and Heather and Trent and Bill and Roof. We'll have our bar set up. We'll have gunner kennels on display. We'll have Jack's coming in from Gumleaf Boots for the weekend to show you his wares. We've got Garmin right across the aisle from there. On the other side of the building, there's going to be W Hunting Supply. Right. You're going to get to meet. I can't wait. It's so exciting. And to think that, like, I could do 2 trade shows next year. The other thing is I was looking up an old episode, and on my RSS feed, this is my 503rd episode. I can't even believe it, okay? This thing started in 2015. This is the start. This is the start of my 10th year of podcasting. Who knew? I didn't know. When I started, it was really to save some stories and to have some fun. It's still all about stories and having fun, but God knows it turned into, what it turned into is my job, my career, and the only way you can do it is only 2 ways you can do this. You have to be, what do they call that? When you're born into money, like the name I'm looking for. Well, I can't think of the name. Come on, Ron. Trust fund. You got to either be a trust fund kid or you have to have people that want to support you and companies that want to support you. And I've got both. I've got the best patrons in the world, Patreon, Patreon. Patreon. The second level of Patreon subscribers have been getting once a month. They've been getting the history of all the dogs. I started with JD and Queenie. I'm working on Haskell now. So if nothing else, if you ever want to hear the entire dog story unfiltered, blatantly honest about, I'm on dog number, 25, 30. I can't remember. A lot of dogs. Some short-lived, some long-lived, some short stay, some long stay. Hunt. All the hijinks, all the things that were wrong with some of these dogs and all the things that were right with some of the dogs. So that goes to Patreon patrons. And I can't thank you Patreon patrons enough. I think I've had Patreon now for about 7 years, maybe 8, but that has been a community that this Thursday, that'll be, what will that be? The 11th, I'll have our Zoom room, and that all patrons are invited to that. And there's discounts. But the other way that you do this, they have a podcast as long as you have to have sponsors, right? There's got to be There's got to be it's a business. It is a business. Don't fool yourself. Nobody out there is not trying to, make a few dollars on it. And I could not thank my sponsors over the years enough. My title sponsor, OnX, everybody knows what they do for the outdoors, right? The mapping, the layers, it is the one tool that I bet most of you don't have all of my sponsors' products in your car, in your truck, in your barn, in your kennel, wherever you keep your stuff. But I'll bet you most of you have Onyx. Now I know a lot of you, a lot of you have Gunner Kennels because, my Patreon patrons have a discount code for that, and Gunner is again in for this year. Can't wait to see. Actually, if you got the chance, go down to Nashville to that NWTF thing because I'm not going to be in the Gunner booth, but I will be spending some time there with the whole crew, and Purina's going to be there. There's a bunch of come down there, text me, find me, write me. We'll get a drink together. We'll have some fun. I cannot wait to go there. But on X is the title sponsor. Gunner Kennels is my oldest sponsor. And you know what they make. Boss Shot Shells is my shotgun shell sponsor. Boss Shot Shells makes the best non-tox ammo, period. It's not even up for debate. I'll get Brandon Saricki on here, and you get your ammo company guy. We'll put them together we'll do a podcast. If you think you're shooting something better than Boss, I think you're delusional. And of course, on your dog's neck and on your wrist or in your vest pocket is Garmin. Keeps your dog safe, tracking, training. It's honestly, it's the only collar that I see on dogs. Now, every once in a while, I bump into somebody who's using something else. But, they probably figured they didn't hear about Garmin. They heard about this one. And as soon as that one breaks, which it will, they're going to go to Garmin. And they're going to go to W Supply, who also will be at Pheasant Fest. I said that. And if you want to see what I'm talking about with customer service and guys that love what they do, when you need your Garmin, whatever product it is, or other dog equipment, you go to W Supply. It's that simple, right? It's like, I want to do a wild game kitchen. I want to do more with the birds I shoot and the ducks I shoot. Or if you're a big game hunter, which I'm not. I do have a deer, though, this year. I didn't shoot it, but I've got a deer. And everything in the Walton's catalog, it's like, you're going to keep that Walton's catalog right next to wherever you do most of your reading. We don't need to expound on that. Wherever you keep your favorite magazines, get yourself the Walton's catalog. There's thousands of items. I mean, from the cutlery to the totes to the tubs to the grinders to the stuffers to the slicers to the vacuum sealers. There is nothing they don't have, but they tell you they don't have the meats. Mossberg's got a lineup of guns that, it surpasses any other gun company for the amount of guns they put out, the amount of styles, the amount of it's Mossberg. It's been around since 1919, right? Right here in good old America. I think they're in Texas and Connecticut. I love Mossberg. And four-wheel campers. Well, I said earlier, there's going to be 2 trucks there with the four-wheel campers. You got to come see that at Pheasant Fest. Once you see this thing popped up and set up with, in my case, now this is not a conflict of interest. There's certain things you got to do when you deck out a vehicle or a dog trailer or a camper. My Gunner Kennels did not create the bed, so to speak, that I needed with the Model M camper from Four Wheel Camper. And I had a beautiful Alder Grove dog box, custom stainless steel and aluminum dog box. And you'll see it when you come to Pheasant Fest. It had to be special made. There's some things you just have to have made. When you want it to be just right, I can put my gunners on top of it, but this thing fits right in between my wheel wells, under the shelves, notched around. It is gorgeous. And my buddy from Alder Grove is going to also be at Pheasant Fest with his new dog box, his new transport boxes for pickup trucks. Oh, this is going to be epic. It's going to be epic. I don't, Canine Athlete, they're going to be there too with their Wilderness Athlete products, just like last year, passing out samples, getting you discounts and coupon cards. They're going to be there. And of course, Purina Pro Plan's going to be there. Obviously, Purina is one of the biggest sponsors of Pheasant Fest that has ever existed. And on the Purina Dog stage, there's going to be lessons and seminars and demos and you name it. In fact, the same thing at National Wild Turkey Federation convention. The guy that you're going to hear in this podcast, now this is a different podcast. Jordan and I, we went down a rabbit hole of like, how did his kids basically almost all become dog trainers in their own right of different levels? Well, Purina's having Jordan and his family come down to Nashville, and they're going to do 2 demonstrations a day. If you want to see the coolest cockers and kids demonstration that you could ever picture, then you got to come down to Nashville. I'm going to be there. I'll be there. You be there. And thanks for listening. I know some of you have been listening since day one, which was 9.1 year ago. So we're in our 10th year, and I hope you listen for another 10 years because I'll be doing it. And I hope you pay attention to our sponsors of Onyx, Gunner Kennel, Boss Shot Shell, Garmin, W Supply, Waltons, Mossberg & Son, 4-Wheel Campers, Canine Athlete, and Purina Pro Plan. You know, on my old whiteboard here, I've got Leinenkugel, then it's scratched out. And then I had Perrin back in the day, scratched out. I got to talk to Watermark. I'm crossing my fingers. I would love. It's the best brewery in West Michigan. I'm telling you, if you're ever coming up, especially summertime, coming up with your dog, got a big courtyard, boy, I gotta work on Watermark. But right now, I'm not telling you they're sponsoring the show. I'm telling you, I would love them to sponsor this show. And I think that could happen. And of course, you know, Behind the Dog YouTube channel on the Hunting Dog Podcast YouTube channel, we're releasing the last of the Weimeraner episode, and coming up soon for sale, and then later on for general release is going to be basically the best documentary on the poodle pointer that has ever been made. We went out to Boise, Idaho. We interviewed Bob Ferris. We were there for 2 days. We've got video, pictures, conversation, all kinds of stuff to back up the. It's going to be, wait till you see that one. Seriously. And of course, if your dog kind of sucked this year and really needed some work and you didn't do the Upland Institute last year, okay, if you didn't do it, you're like, oh, I don't think I need it. I think my dog's going to listen better. No, there's some work to do. Get the Upland Institute and just try to apply yourself. Don't be like me. Don't hope that your Cocker Spaniel is going to be steady because you can make it sit in the backyard, okay? Get the Upland Institute and train your dog this year. That's what you need to do. God, I can't. Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah, well, you can tell. It's like, love you guys. Love you girls. I love you girls more. Bye.
This compute. All right. Now, everything you say can and will be held against you, Jordan Horak.
All right.
Everybody, this is, I think Jordan's been on my podcast at least 2 or 3 times, right, Jordan?
Yeah, something like at least 2 times.
Yeah, it goes back to like 2018 and always struggling to find guests. And I was Cocker Spaniel curious. And then I don't know if I saw an Instagram thing or something from Purina, but that you took, what was your dog's name that won all the big stuff that year?
Well, Breeze won the amateur nationals, but then Cato, the name that's more recognizable, Cato won the Open.
Right. And then that spurred the Cato board, right?
Correct.
Until then,
yeah,
everybody just nailed some 2x4s together and let them stay waterlogged out in the yard.
That's right.
And then you decided to say, like, well, that's a little silly. I think I can make something. That was the Cato board. It's funny how, like, the Cato board, I see it in a whole lot of different people's places, Instagrams. Like, what made you did you think it was like a fool's errand, or did you feel like you nailed it just with the thought of the Cato board?
Oh, I was scared to death. I was scared to death. The amount the amount of money to do a plastic product is it's absurd, like absolutely absurd. Like take out a second mortgage on your house, absurd kind of money.
Oh,
So, and having never done a new product before, and knowing that the vast majority of new products fail, right? I mean, if you go look at the statistics, it's like, I mean,
right.
they almost all fail, right? So I had put like all of my life savings and then some into this venture, like without making. And yeah, honestly, so many friends and acquaintances were like, "Well, huh? Like, so what? Like, what are you gonna do after you sell them to all your friends? Like, and the market's saturated."
You know,
I was like, "Oh, let's not talk about that." So no, I thought that there was a market there, and I thought that like I would sell some, and I really hoped that I would at least make my money back and not have it be a money losing venture. But
right.
yeah, I had no idea like the journey that it was going to take me on, because like honestly, it's since the first time we talked, like it's really been a journey. Like I can't believe that was only 6 years ago,
Right.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
I guess it was 5 years ago. Like it's kind of crazy. Like a lot has changed in that period of time.
Yeah, because when I first interviewed you, I don't even think the Cato board was in the works. It might have
It
been.
wasn't.
I don't think so. Right, right. Um,
It was fall of 19 that I launched them.
okay. And I had this funny picture in my head because I'm addicted to Shark Tank, right? That show on
Yeah.
see, and you see people come
Yep.
in with, I just made a vacuum for kids' toys, and I just made a new granola, and you see the look on some of the the panel's faces,
Yes.
and I could see you and your wife and your kids trotting in there with this board, and it'd go,
I got a platform.
I gotta put, you built what? A little bitty platform.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I tell people what my business is. Like, there's nothing glamorous about it.
Yeah,
So I'm like, well, I have the dog. It's a dog training platform. They're like, oh, like an online training thing. I'm like, no, not online. Like just a physical platform,
right,
and it's pretty hard to explain. And then
right,
you show them, particularly non-dog people. Like the parents at my kids' sporting events or something. Just they're
right.
sitting there for hours on the sideline talking, right? And
Mhm.
so I have to show them a picture. Like, here's what the product looks like, and then they're always like, "Oh, like, what do you use that for?" So they sit there, like I can't tell you like how sick I am
Of
of
explaining.
explaining how to use this thing with people who, frankly, are never going to use it because they don't even
Right.
have a dog. But you
But
don't want
once
to
you
be rude and just blow them off,
right, and once you start talking, yeah, you can't go like, "Oh, it's nothing you'd be interested in." Then it sounds weird.
right?
Then you're
He's
like,
right. So you just try to like it turns it's so dumb because I hate sales, to be honest. I'm much more about relationships than sales, but it kind of turns into an elevator pitch. Like, how can I tell these people in 30 seconds what my product is and how it does, just so I can kind of get rid of that conversation and move on to something else because I
yeah.
don't really want to talk about it.
Which we will for sure here, but I do want to
Yeah.
I do want people to know the last time you sent me a couple of them, my wife, I think I told you, my wife kidnapped one of them. And she's not a
Yeah.
really short woman, but she's 5'4", 5'5", or something like that, right? Not particularly
Yeah.
short, but working at the kitchen counter, she's had a Cato board now at our kitchen counter where she does most of her food prep. She has a Cato board at the counter, and it gives her just that little like where
Yeah.
your arms are a little more
So
comfortable. She bakes there. She makes all she uses the Cato board every day,
way more than you do. So,
way more
and
than
she still uses it.
every day. And now what she did is she had this little anti-fatigue mat that used to sit in front of the
Yep.
sink. So she bought another one of those and put that on top of the Cato board. So now she
Yeah.
can get a little,
Oh,
anti-weather.
that's life of luxury right there.
No, our kitchen's a Cato kitchen.
Yeah, I like it. I've had people send me videos or pictures that they're using it for rehab, like after knee replacement or hip surgery.
Sure.
And
That first
it's
step.
weird. Yeah, it's weird. Like, and you can stack them if you want higher, but if you
Mhm.
just had knee surgery, just lifting your foot 3 inches is a lot.
Right, right.
So it's kind of cool. I mean, I don't market it for that. I don't sell it for that. But it's cool that people find different uses for it.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know what I like mine for? Like, you know how poor, let me turn this phone off. I want to make sure we don't get a ring here. Um,
Okay.
uh, you know how little I train, but how I like the thought of training, right? And
Yeah. Well,
I'm on my second Cocker Spaniel right now. And I use that Cato board on my bigger dogs more than I use it on the Cocker Spaniel, because what I do on my 8-foot training table that I've always used, the elevated, like a 20-inch table with ramps, I put that in the middle. So that's where they
okay. Yep.
I kind of use it properly, but it does give them a sense of like, oh, this is where he's going to stop me. And then I move the Cato board
Yeah.
down to the end of the table as I'm making progress, like in a hold and carry situation.
Yeah.
Then I just slide the Cato board down to the end, and then they know that if they make 10 steps, they're going to be on that board, and that's where I take their bumper out when I start the hold and carry process, which
Yeah.
you didn't tell me. Maybe you did, and I didn't listen. You don't really ever force fetch a Cocker Spaniel, do you?
No, no, I mean, people do.
Right.
Like some of the lab guys and some of the Springer guys that have converted over to Cockers, they kind of brought that with them. But I don't like it for a Cocker.
Well, neither one of mine liked the first one I had. My buddy, the trainer Justin, he said, he goes, don't do that with that dog. You have right now, you have no reason to believe it's not going to retrieve, which
Right.
did perfectly, right? And then with this black one I've got, this the one that you helped me find out at Absolute Cat.
Yep. Yep.
In fact, it's your sire or your dam is this one. I can't remember.
So Section 35. Tyler Mauder has his own kennel now, so I'll give him a little plug.
Right, right,
He's the guy you got it from.
right.
Tyler has a daughter to Breeze, and
Okay.
Breeze is the dog that I won the amateur nationals with.
Gotcha.
Breeze was the best hunting dog that I ever had by far, and probably the best trial dog. Cato won the big one, so everybody knows that name.
But you
Breeze
know the
placed
dog.
third at the Open. I'm telling you, if you wanted to kill birds, like I don't care what breed, like that Breeze was the dog to take out every time, every
Yeah.
time. So you have a granddaughter to her.
Nice, nice. I got fame and
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, and she's a little tougher.
Mhm.
She's a little more independent than my other one, you know.
I would expect that.
But she's still like, if I can get her out by herself, then she wants to be up on the chair next to me or up on my lap. But
Yeah,
also, if there's anything else to do, she's more gone, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But anyway, so at night, this young dog, I've been doing a couple hold and carries, just starting to hold it, a couple of steps onto the board. We're getting there. And I thought, I'm going to take Vivi out. Her name is V, just the letter V.
Okay,
And I
okay.
put her up there. She goes right to the board. And she did not want me to put that bumper in her mouth, right? She just, I've had better luck putting it in a pointer's mouth, right? That doesn't want anything to do with retrieving. And I
Yep.
put it in there, and I'm putting it in there, and she's spitting it out, which is normal, right? She spits it out. It rolls off my elevated table. She jumps off the table, grabs it, jumps back on the Cato,
Brings it back.
and won't let it go. Holds it just like, she's like, you don't need to put this in my mouth. I know what I'm doing. And last year, the first pheasant that she saw dropped in her whole life, never had a pheasant near her in her whole life. My buddy Connor out in South Dakota shot it. It hit like a tractor, a 2-track in a field. He shot, she saw it, and luckily he stopped his dog because he saw that she was going to get it. She grabbed that pheasant like a thief and ran it back to my ankles. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah, so why force fetch a dog like that? Other
Exactly.
than I know all the arguments about it's more
Right.
than
It,
the
you
more
could,
than the retrieve, it's giving into pressure and all that. I understand that,
right.
but
But
I
for
think
an
there's
average,
other ways to teach that.
yeah, and like there's a lot of ways of teaching a very clean hold and a very clean uh presentation
Yeah,
without doing any of
yeah.
that.
I would say with the cockers, like they're a really smart dog. And I think everybody wants to think their dog is smart. I honestly think, and I've had multiple breeds. I think cockers are like much higher intelligence than the vast majority of hunting out there. Probably
I
because there's some border. I think there's some border collie bred into them at some point. I could be wrong. I'm serious about that. Like
oh,
because they are a mongrel. Like they've had a lot of things bred into them. There may be
right.
some border collie. They're a really smart dog. And if you're gonna try to just well, for lack of a better word, bully them into doing what you want, a
Right.
lot of them just won't put up with that. Like
Right.
they just if they think they're being treated unfairly, they're just done. Like they're
Yeah.
just they're not going to be pressured like that.
Right. And yeah, and if I do something kind of out of sequence, she does this, drops to her butt as a default and then rolls to her hip. And
Okay.
if there's anything that she thinks is like, she's like, oh no, then she goes to her side.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't
Yeah.
do nothing to you. And then I'm
What?
like,
Yeah. How?
I couldn't do anything to them anyway. But yeah, no, I absolutely love that dog. She's a hoot.
Good.
Um,
Good.
but speaking of dogs and kids, I saw a recent post of yours, and that's why I called you the other day, of your daughter working the dogs and your son's working the dog.
Yeah.
And you said,
Yep.
you said, let's talk about that a little bit, because
Yeah.
it is almost, I don't want to say it's almost popular, but from my years of judging the versatile test, it used to be just guys showing up 25 years ago. And then it was guys and their wives. And their wives
Yeah.
sometimes ran the dog in the puppy test. And now you're seeing kids in it, right? But
Yeah.
your daughter, when I met her, your daughter was already handling dogs, and now your whole family's.
Yeah.
How did you do that? I mean, it's usually you get one or two of them that want to just play video games.
Yeah. So I've been thinking really hard, after we talked last week and kind of decided we were going to do this. And
Mhm.
after that conversation, I'm like, why did I even suggest that? Like, or why did I agree to that? Because like this is a really big and difficult topic, and even this morning I was thinking like who am I to tell anybody like how to parent a kid or anything like that, right? So I want to make sure, like, I do not want this to come across as like Jordan got on Ronnie's podcast and told everybody how to raise their kids and how
Right.
to train a dog. Like, I'm probably not the guy for that. Like, full disclosure, I have never read a parenting book in my entire life.
That's good.
Never, not a single one. So it's a little bit ironic that I would be on here talking about like raising kids and training dogs and stuff. So I'm not saying I'm the end all on this. I do hope, like, if we talk about the process and kind of how I have structured things here and like what we've seen for results and whatever, hopefully there's some people out there that maybe don't have kids yet, but want to have kids and they're like, yeah, I'm going to file that away. And like, there's some good ideas there.
Yeah.
Honestly, the younger your kid is, if you're listening to this, probably the more benefit this podcast will be, because there gets to be a certain point where like, okay, if your kid's 15 years old, yeah, you kind of already set your path there a little bit, right? Like you're
Right.
probably not going to make
He's
any
either
any
doing
big
it with
changes.
he's either doing it with you or doing soccer or doing something or right, whatever it is.
Yeah, or the kid's tuned out and doesn't want anything to do with anything. I mean, but at a certain point, like you kind of already dug the hole and like there it is, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe built the mountain. I don't know. That's probably a better way to put it. But so the younger the kid, probably the more benefit this will be, and hopefully nobody like tries to copy me or imitate me because that sounds like a really bad idea. But hopefully they're like, oh, there's a couple things in there that sounds kind of interesting, and I could see how that would maybe help me with my situation. So
Right.
I'm gonna frame it up that way. So like hopefully this comes across with some humility that like, don't, I'm not saying here's the way to do it. I'm just saying
Oh,
here's how I did it.
right,
Okay.
right.
So,
And
well,
being born into basically a family business is different than being a person in a city whose kid plays soccer, right? And soccer's
yeah, fair.
nothing to do with the home life. It's not like his mom and dad were World Cup soccer players, and you're gonna go like, oh yeah, kid's gonna play soccer, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
your kids were, you've had dogs for, I mean, before you had kids.
Yeah, a, I actually had a yellow lab named Cato when I was a kid. That was mine, and that was pretty much untrained because I didn't know how to train. And then I got my first cocker in 2008, I think, and then my daughter was born the next year. So, it's kind of coincided. And then,
Right.
it wasn't a business until 2019, really. And prior to that, I just worked a normal job, but had this massive obsession on the side. So,
Right, right.
I mean, I put my wife through the ringer on that, to be honest. Like, I mean, we went years and years without taking a vacation because we had 15 dogs and 3 little kids, and you can't get away from that. So, like, I mean, we probably went close to a decade without like taking a vacation as a family because
Yeah.
how do you? And I would work. I would get home from work and I would go out and train dogs. And I would train dogs till dark, basically. And then yeah, rinse and repeat the next day. And then
Yeah.
on the weekends were like I was probably going to get a couple of sessions in with the dogs on the weekends.
Right.
And the kids kind of were. I maybe wasn't honestly like maybe wasn't the greatest dad at the start because I definitely spent more time with the dogs than I spent with the kids early on. In retrospect, I don't know that that was necessarily a bad thing. So we did say at the start, like when we first started having kids, we saw a lot of parents that their lives changed completely once they had a kid.
Yeah.
So, they have this certain lifestyle, kid comes in, and then their life just turns upside down and everything revolves around that kid.
Right.
And I'm not really sure how we came up with this, but we decided like that didn't make sense. Like if you look back over, really like today, meaning in the last decade or two, it
Right.
seems to be when parents have become so obsessed with coddling their children and making everything about their children, where in the past, kids were born into a family and became a part of that family, but the family didn't revolve around that kid. So
Right.
I don't think it's healthy for a 2-year-old kid to have all the family's decisions made based on that 2-year-old kid.
Right.
Like what we're eating for supper. Why is what we're eating for supper like dependent on what that 2-year-old wants?
Right.
That's ridiculous. Like how is the 2-year-old calling shots on what we're eating for supper? So, and that's real small, but like if you amplify that, like all of a sudden, well, I can't go hunting because I have this little kid, or I can't do this because I have this little kid. And I don't think that's healthy for parents because like that just leads to like contempt toward the child. Leads to frustration. Like it's mentally that's not good for a parent. I think even more so, it's not good for a child to feel like there's such a big deal from such a young age. Like I think
raising a puppy, not, right?
Yeah.
You don't want the puppy to be the center of attention because that dog,
that's right.
It'll
Because later on they become so demanding, and they start to really think that they're a big deal as they get older. And then you get a dog that's noisy in the crate. You get a dog that's obnoxious. Yes, I think it's similar for a kid. Like if a kid has had everything revolve around them from an early age, I think by the time that they're in high school, they pretty well think life is about them.
Right.
And it leads to like a selfishness and whatever. So this is terrible that I'm doing this parenting advice, but I honestly think.
Wait till you hear mine.
Okay, but I really do think like it helped my kids on some level that they were like born into a family that they kind of had to assimilate or become a part of the family instead of the family becoming a part of them. So weekends we're training dogs. Evenings we're training dogs. Wintertime's a little tougher because here in Wisconsin it's dark at 4:30 and you get off work at 4 and it's dark by the time you get home. But there's still stuff I could do like in my basement at that time, like little drills, like that's when you work on perfecting a delivery or even like introducing like some handling drills and things like that. So I still did train over the wintertime during the week.
Right.
It just wasn't quite as much. But the kids definitely got to see two things. One, they got to see life wasn't all about them. Like
Right.
they were kind of sharing it with the dogs, right? They also got to see that I had passion, that there was things that I did in life. So if you look around, most adults right now, like they had their time in life. They played high school sports, maybe they played collegiate sports, and then they get to a certain point and it's like, what identifies you in life? Well, I go to my job and then I go to kids' sports activities in the evening, right?
Right.
Like, but there's no competition in life. There's no like striving to like perfect a hobby or anything like that. It's just kind of like, well, I kind of gave up on the competing part in life, and now I'm just kind of a facilitator. I go to
Right.
work and do my job, and I come home and I facilitate my kids like
Right.
fulfilling their lives, right? And I don't think that's really healthy either. I think it was good that my kids saw me like going all out on something. They got to see that like what it took to be really, really good at something,
Right.
And I mean, that's
Even to
was that
to little things like, try to, you can't do much when a kid's 1 or 2 or 3, but when there's a gaggle of little children that kind of understand things from any, I don't know what that age is anymore, maybe
yeah.
maybe 3 and up or whatever, but like just seeing you go downstairs, feeding and watering, cleaning kennels, like
Yes.
it's also a work ethic they're seeing. It's not
Yep.
at that point they don't know that dad's crazy about competing with his dogs. They just know that, well,
Yep.
dad's always doing this. And like
Yep.
it's very, it goes back to what you said about, you're not just sitting there all day playing Legos with them. You've got things to do, and they kind of pick up on that. They
So how about this one for a rabbit hole?
yeah.
We'll tie it back into dogs here.
Yeah.
So you know how like you've heard of mother lions probably in
Mhm.
breeding.
Sure. Sure.
And in most species, like most breeders will tell you the mom is more important than the father, right? Like
Right.
racehorses, deer, like in the pen raised deer world, like a good producing doe is really, really important. Like, and in dogs, like a lot of times people say, well, the mom contributes more than the dad contributes, right?
Right.
I think we've probably all heard that. From a scientific standpoint, that doesn't really make a lot of sense because it should be an equal contribution. It's gonna ebb and flow. Like maybe there's a little bit more that it takes more after the mom or takes more after the dad, but like ultimately, like they're both contributing 50-50, the dad and
Right.
the mom, right?
Right.
So I think, and I probably read this somewhere, and but I don't know. I don't know who to give it credit to, so I'll just take the credit for it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm not trying to plagiarize, but I think that the reason that the mom is more important is because the mom is the one that stays with that puppy for the first 2 months of its life. The
Right.
dad is nowhere to be found, right? So
Right.
that puppy in those first 8 weeks is learning an awful lot about life from the
Right.
mom, like how to respond to adversity, how to like it's learning behaviors, it's learning how to perceive the world from its mom in those first two
Right.
months, the first 8 weeks of its life. Dad's nowhere to be found. I think that's why the mom is more important than the dad, not necessarily because of the DNA contribution, but because of the environmental contribution to that
Right.
puppy. So if you take that back to kids, like you could say, well, the first 2 years don't really matter, or first 3 years don't really matter because the kid's not really doing anything. But so my family makeup right now, I have a 14-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old son, and an 11-year-old son, and then I have a 3-year-old son. And the 3-year-old son is like it's been quite the adventure, put it that way. He's a great kid, but it's been interesting because the first three kids you're like, yeah, I don't, it just like punched in the face, like you don't like you got to come up for air, I don't know what's going on, right?
Right.
Then you get, now I'm like what is it? The frontal cortex or something is fully developed on me now because I'm 40
Yeah.
years old.
Right.
And I think maybe a little bit more logical or reasonable, introspective than I was when the other kids were little. So now with Axel, the 3-year-old, it's definitely a different parenting approach, I would say. But that kid, he's 3 years old. He wants to be just like his big brothers, and his big brothers like love him and take care of him. Like he's never had like a negative experience with his older siblings. So someday he's gonna have like a hard wake up to life. But
Right.
but you watch him and how he interacts with his older brothers. Like they're doing push-ups. So guess what the 3-year-old's doing? He's down on the floor cranking out push-ups. Not good form, but as best as a 3-year-old can do push-ups, he's doing push-ups. And the boys are going downstairs to play Nerf wars. He's going downstairs to play Nerf wars. What's crazy, my older boys, I hope someday they listen to this podcast. They probably won't, but maybe someday. When they were like 5 or 6 years old, they got their first Nerf guns.
Yeah.
And I remember like shooting them with them and they cried. And I was like, you absolute pansy. And Nerf guns today, like they zip them. I don't know if you've been hit by one, but like you catch one on the flesh, like especially on the hand, and like you got hit. It does sting. But I remember they cried about it. Not I made fun of them for it, I think. But they cried. The 3-year-old, like when he was 2 years old, he'd get shot with the same Nerf guns and like he might like laugh almost, right?
Right.
That's environmental. It's the same DNA, it's not the same DNA, but it's the same parents.
Right.
So it's completely environmental that he can get shot with a Nerf gun at 2 years old and laugh about it, and they could get shot with a Nerf gun at 5 or 6 years old and cry about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they hate that part of history. The cool thing about history is you can't go back and change it. Like what happened happened. So you could be as tough as you want today. You still cried when you were 5 years old and got hit by a Nerf gun. So I do think like environment is really, really important. And so looking back, like the environment that we had those kids in, they got to see dad be passionate about something. And if dad spent time with them, talking third person here, I spent time with them. But if they really wanted to spend time with me, they were going to have to be part of my passion, right? Like I wasn't just going to be sitting there like playing Barbies or Legos all the time with them. Like I had my life too. Yeah. And if they wanted to spend time with me, a significant amount of time with me, they were going to have to be a part of my hobby. Right. I honestly think that is important. And I think that like for my daughter in particular, like for sure, that's what took her down this path. Like, I mean, when she was 6 or 7 years old, she started going out training with me.
Right.
And she went, and it got to where it was every time. Like I couldn't sneak out of the house to go train dogs without her. And if I did successfully sneak out, like she was put out. Like she would be upset at me that I didn't let her know that I was going out to train dogs.
You're on a date, right? You're like,
yeah, totally. Totally.
When I met your daughter, I think that was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And
yeah,
I was like, I've got 3 daughters. They're all grown. They're almost your age. But I'm like, yeah, my daughters like doing the stuff I did, but she was literally your mini me, right? I mean, she's calling these dogs and whistling these dogs over. And I was like, that girl's a better dog trainer than I am. But you didn't say this is what you're going to do. She just wanted to be with you. And
that's right.
You was a dog trainer or, I would say amateur, like you had a full-time.
Yeah.
It just, that was the time she got your attention and you were giving her attention, but there was something there. It's like I don't know. It's like a family thing. It's not, it could have been, you could have been raising koi goldfish in gold ponds and selling them. She probably would have loved that just as much,
Yeah, I think that's true for sure. So how would other people recreate that? Like, I honestly, I don't know for sure, but I do think like being passionate about something is important. Like if you treat it flippantly, your kids are going to treat it flippantly. If you treat it as something valuable, your kids are more likely to treat it as something valuable. So that's kind of the whole. So the other part on the environment, and this isn't something that everybody can do. We do homeschool our kids, and that it's for sure not for everyone. I was homeschooled when I was a kid. I actually was homeschooled all the way up until college, and my wife was as well. We didn't know each
Wow.
other at the time till college. So for us, it's like a really familiar thing. And
Right.
probably half your listeners are just like, oh, we'll just click end right now because this
Oh,
guy's
no,
weird.
no.
But I did. uh, it was a normal thing for us. The homeschooling was. So when we started having kids, it wasn't like a big decision.
Right.
We pretty much knew we were going to homeschool them as well. They have lots of extracurricular activities, like the social side. We do other things for, but from an education standpoint, they're educated at home. That does free up a lot of time. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
they're not riding a bus in the morning and in the afternoon. They don't have recess. They don't have time in between classes. Like they can sit at one desk or one table and they know when they get their work done that they can
Yeah.
move on with the day. So there's motivation to move quickly, not waste time. So that does free up a lot of time in the day for them. I think there would be some significant challenges if they were leaving home at 7 in the morning and getting home at 4 in the afternoon
Oh, yeah.
and had homework to do once they got home. So I feel for those parents that are in that situation. A lot of parents, like when they find out that we homeschool, they're like, wow, that must be so hard and what a sacrifice. And like frankly, it's the opposite for me. Like I feel like I could be way more selfish homeschooling them because we have more time to do what we want.
Right.
Like
Right.
I don't have to get a slip from the school for my kid to miss a
Right.
day. Like
Yeah.
we do whatever we want.
Right. It could stop raining one day and you've been waiting to get out. You're like, okay, kids, let's go outside. Right. Just like that.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
That's it.
For sure. And like they can, if they want to do 2 days of school in one day, they can do 2 days of school. Or they can do 1.5 days, and then we can take a day off and go fishing or hunting, and then the following day they can do a day and a half of school, or they can do school on a Saturday, or so that like it adds a lot of flexibility. Uh, that's really really helpful. If we were tied down with school, I know this would be all much more difficult, but I think the principles still apply, like being passionate about a hobby. And maybe somebody's listening to this and they're like, well, I'm really like laissez-faire about dog training and stuff, but maybe there's something else they're passionate about, like maybe it's, I don't care, maybe it's RC airplanes, or I've never done that before, but like just something like be
Again,
passionate about something in life.
right. If you've got, it could be stamp collecting, but at some point,
Right.
a little child in your house is going to want to get on your lap and ask you what you're doing. And eventually they'll know what a stamp is. Right. And eventually
Yep.
they're like, can I collect stamps? And you don't, I guess the point what I think we're trying to get to is if the example's there and the passion and the lifestyle's there, you don't have to force anything down their throat. It just,
Yeah.
it just funnels to a good spot.
Yeah. And the sorry, I think we might have a little lag. It's probably me. I'm sorry.
No,
But the other piece I was going to say is a lot. So we'll tie this back into dog training. So if I have a 12-week-old puppy and I really, really like, man, this is my, like, tie this in. We're going to like compare this to a child. Like the child is your child and you want that child to be the most incredible thing. And this 12-week-old puppy, especially if you only have one dog, like if you have one dog, like your whole identity is tied up in that one little dog. Which is why it's good to have multiple dogs, because then it takes pressure off of one individual dog, I think. But you got this 12-week-old puppy and you so badly want it to be the brag dog that you can show off to your buddies. And you probably spent a ton of money on it and went to the best breeder because they said they were the best breeder. Whether they were or not, remains to be seen. But you have this dog that's supposedly so special. So you start pushing it, right? Like, well, if we're going to be amazing, like we better get started now and push, right? The vast majority of that time, that puppy ends up resenting that and ends up being a washout because you were pushing it, right? You were giving it way too much. I think we frequently do that with kids. So we want this kid to be amazing at sports, or we want this dog to be our hunting buddy. And so we push, and we start real young, and we push and we push. And that just kind of like familiarity breeds contempt, right? That's a pretty common expression. The more, especially at a young age, the more we do it, the more it can become mundane, boring, maybe even something that we like detest, right? So I think that there's value in doing it in small amounts. So like with a 12-week-old puppy, I'm going to do really short sessions, and hopefully I can have the puppy kind of dictating that session. So the puppy is asking me for more, like, hey, can we get one more retrieve? Can you throw me one more retrieve? And then I'm the one who says, nope, we need to end this, right? So same with our kids. Like a lot of times parents are like, well, my kid loves doing that. So they'll excuse that they're not pushing their kid too hard by saying that their kid loves to do that. But eventually the kid becomes burnt out by it. Right. I mean, it happens, not all the time, but it frequently happens. So same as with a puppy. Yeah, your puppy loved retrieving, but you did it too much, and now it doesn't love retrieving. So same with a kid. Like, yep, your kid loved playing with the dogs, but then you did it too much, or you pushed it, and the kid wanted to go inside or didn't want to come out that day, and you made it happen.
It's raining today, honey. You gotta get out there with dad. We gotta get 3 dogs done today. And the kid's like, well, you just made it like work,
Yep. Yeah. So I would much rather the kid be asking me, can I do this?
Yeah.
And I would rather say no sometimes. Yep. I don't always say yes. Sometimes I say no, because no creates more desire. Yes just fulfills the desire that was already there. No creates. I'm kind of making this up on the fly, but I think this sounds great. And I do think it's true. Like if you say yes, they already were asking. But if you say no to when they were saying yes, that'll make them want it more next time. Like with the puppy, if they're not saying, but physically, if they're asking for another retrieve,
right,
and I maybe even dangle it in front of them, and then put that retrieve away,
right,
it doesn't curb that desire. It just makes it stronger the next time I take that puppy out.
Yeah, no, and I think anybody in dog rolling has always said, like, stop on a high note, right? Meaning everything's good. Could you go longer? Sure, but holding back a little bit. I agree 100%. Kids or dogs, it's like I remember asking if I could stay up late, like when I was a kid, like. When you're kids, you go to bed at 8:00, right? And my sisters would be up, and every once in a while I could stay up a few minutes, but mostly it was no. I never lost the desire to ask the next day, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Like, can I tonight?
That's right.
And then all of a sudden, of course, with a puppy's life, they're a teenager by the time they're 12 months old. It takes us 13 years to be a teenager, but it's the same thing. Those no's are just as important as the yeses with the dogs and the kids. Yeah.
That's right. I even think like parallels in life. So my boys and I like to fish a lot. And in the summertime, we do a lot of fly fishing for trout down in southern Wisconsin. And like they're obsessed with it. Like they're really, really obsessed with it. And they've been asking for chest waders for a long time. And I just make them wet wade. So in the spring, it'll be really cold out, and they're wet wading because I'm not getting them chest waders. Like, you guys grow too fast, and like I'm gonna buy them, and you're gonna outgrow them, right? But they still love fishing there. Like they put up with the hardship.
Right.
It's not. I mean, they don't even think of it as hardship. But yes, sometimes they're really, really cold. Sometimes they're really cold because the trout stream. When you hop in a trout stream and it warms your feet up, it's cold. Yeah. So this year for Christmas, I finally got them chest waders, and they were so shocked because they thought they were going to be 30 years old before they got chest waders, I think. And they opened them and they put them on. I just got them off of Amazon, and you're trying to like, oh, that's probably the right size. So they get them, they open their present, like, Dad, I never would have guessed. They were so pumped, and they put them on right away. And they pull them up, and they come like up to their chin, and they're like, oh, these are perfect. These are perfect, Dad. And I'm thinking, oh, we're gonna have to send these things back because look at it, like it's like a
Right.
full body suit, not chest waiter. And then they're like, there was not one negative thing about it, right? Like to them,
Right.
it was the most. They were those chest waiters were absolutely. They fit them perfectly. They were exactly perfect, right? If I had got those kids chest waders when they were 6 years old and it was just a familiar thing, like it becomes like an entitlement thing. It takes away the specialness of it. So like by making them ask and by making them toil for a while, by finally giving it to them when they're 11 and 12 years old, even though they've been asking for a few years, like
Yeah.
it made it that much more
Right.
awesome for them,
Right.
right? And like they want to go steelhead fishing next week. You know, like they're gonna beg me to go fishing every week for the next until we go fishing, and they figure out that it's really cold fishing in January. but but the same way for dog training, like if my 5-year-old asks me for a puppy and I'm like, oh, he wants a puppy, and I just give him that puppy right away, it kind of takes the specialness away. Like
Right.
it's okay for that kid to ask for a little while, you know.
And
And if they if they want to go hunting with you and you tell them no, that doesn't mean that you just like shut them down and made them hate hunting. You might
right.
create a little bit more drive. Like you still have to fulfill it sometimes. You still have to give them taste of it so that
Right.
they keep wanting more. But if you just dump it all on them, so I think a lot of kids out there they're given everything, and it just creates like this. Like they become complacent about it. Like, yep, I got a dog, I got a shotgun that fits me. Like, shoot, I never got a shotgun that fit me. I like ever. Like,
Ever.
you know, I got gaiters to wear on my legs. I got foot warmers. I got fancy gloves. I got this hat. I got this Sitka jacket on my kid. Like the kid gets everything, and
Right.
like it doesn't leave anything else to want. So it's
Right.
kind of like, well, did that? Like, okay, where I think the kid asking and not always getting, and not just having it all handed to him on a silver platter. I think that there is a lot of value in that. Like having to toil a little bit and having to strive, and then incrementally getting getting what you want or like moving along. I think that's really, really valuable.
Yeah. And that goes back to dog training of the
Yes.
real big mistake that I see at our training grounds. New person comes in with a dog. It's old enough. It's had some shots. We always tell people don't
Yep.
bring a week-old puppy, but
Yep.
it's 4 months old or 5 months old. He's had some rabies shots and what have you. And somebody will inevitably say, "Has your dog seen birds yet?" You know,
Yeah. Yes.
guys, no. Oh, here, let me go put a bird out for you. No, no, no. Let's let you just
Yeah.
let's
Thank
let you
you.
be a dog around dogs. And it's not your
Yeah.
turn. It may not be your turn this whole spring, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that's the thing with kids too. You've got older kids that, like with my sisters, were a lot older than me. Like, well, how come they get to stay up? Like, how come they got a bicycle? Well, I didn't even think I
Yeah.
wasn't old enough to put my feet on the ground. I just wanted to bicycle, and I had those no's for a long time. And people with
Yeah.
dogs, it's such a, I mean, kids and dogs are very similar. It's just that timeline goes by so fast with a dog. But I think
Yep.
people do too much too soon with their dogs as well. They,
Totally.
people like, do you think I'll be able to hunt them this fall? I'm like, I'd like to see that you could have them come when called. You know?
Yeah. So I've had multiple times where I sold a puppy to somebody
Mhm.
and I kept the puppy out of that litter. And 8 months later, they came by with their puppy and they let it out and it won't come when it's called. They throw a ball for it and it won't retrieve the ball. And like it just looks sloppy and untrained, right? And then this is gonna sound like tooting my own horn, but it's not. I'll get my puppy out that's a litter mate, and it sits there sharply, makes great eye contact. I throw a retrieve for it. It runs out, nails the retrieve, brings it back, and like just looks sharp, right?
Yeah.
And this has happened multiple times, and they were like, "Wow, like your puppy is way farther along than mine is. You must train a lot." And it's the exact opposite. Like, no, like, look, I have 4 kids. I have however many dogs. a bunch of them. I'm in the double figures on dogs
Yeah.
most times. And I have a business, or back then I had a job. I'm like, how do you think that I'm training my dog more than you're training?
One
How do you think I'm training this puppy more than you're training? You have
You're
no kids or one kid and you have one dog. You're training more than I am. So
right.
the answer is not train more. The answer is not do more. The
Right.
answer is like be smarter, do less and be smarter with less, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I do think the same is true for kids. Like be really smart and really intentional with less
Yeah.
and create desire from that, and then like slowly fulfill that desire. Like by the time my kids are 18 years old, like they can have a fancy shotgun if they want. And if they want to wear Sitka, fine, you can wear Sitka. I mean, you're buying it yourself or you get a sponsorship or something. But like,
Whatever.
but if you want to wear Sitka, but you ain't wearing Sitka when you're 12 years old
Right.
because
Right.
you
Right.
don't deserve it. Like you haven't, like we can't give you everything right now because then there's nothing left to want. There's nothing left to strive for.
Right.
Um, and the same for the dog. Like if I give you every single toy that PetSmart has, and I give you 3 hours of training sessions every day, like yeah, you're gonna get burned out. You're not gonna want more.
Right.
You're just gonna you're not gonna want to interact with me because you got everything already.
Becomes just a routine and a job and like, oh, okay, nothing special about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to ask
Yep.
your oldest is your daughter.
Yep.
Did did she um did she kind of help her younger brothers, or has she always been like they'll figure it? Like, do you think they gravitated to it, or
Because of her.
because of her?
Um, so I think from an example standpoint, yes. Like they've seen her do that stuff. They definitely develop more slowly, like as far as wanting to do this stuff with me.
Right.
But she did set the example. Interestingly, like and she's gonna listen to this one someday too, probably. But I don't. I think she would rather that the boys didn't do this stuff, the dog stuff, because that's kind of like her thing, Like
She's the only
she kind of
girl.
has it,
She's dad's girl. Yeah. Yeah.
and like let's just keep the boys out of this part of our lives. There, there's definitely a little bit of that, but the boys are interesting because they have. So Serena, my 14-year-old daughter, she does dance and she does 4-H and like so she has things that she does,
Mhm.
but not really like competitive things necessarily. I mean, 4-H is okay, you go to the fair and do something, but like it's not really competitive, right?
Right.
So the dogs are a big thing for her. My boys in particular have a lot of distractions in life. So they love soccer. I mean, they play soccer year round and they play at a pretty high level. Like,
Yeah.
we're at a point now where we're traveling around the Midwest in the
Oh,
spring and in the fall to go to soccer games. And I actually enjoy it because I look at it like training dogs. The whole psychological development is like it's really really fun for me. Uh, and they love their wrestling. They love fishing. They have all these hobbies, and they're like, Dad, like we want to run dogs. And Brett, my 12-year-old, wants to run a dog in a field trial. And I'm like, dude, when are you gonna do that? Because you got soccer games all April and into May, and in the fall, your soccer games start up at the end of August and they go till November. And like, so like, when do you plan on running a field trial? Like, so they have a lot of conflicting things in their schedule. And
right.
that's definitely has made it harder, and it makes it harder for them to be like 100% committed. So this is an awesome segue, I think, because so the way that I had laid this out in my head before we started this podcast was the first half. We'll say it's the first 80% because you just looked at your watch. I don't need to take a bunch of time on the second half, but the first chunk was kind of like, here's the environment. Like, here's
Yeah.
the environment that we've created. Whatever. We haven't really talked much about dogs. The second segment I thought would be, here's like specifically how we have them interact with the dogs and kind of how we've actually like focused on that piece and like made it enjoyable for them. So when they were 7, 8 years old, like they would maybe play with the dogs a little bit, but we're talking about the boys now.
Right.
They weren't obsessed with it, right? Like it was almost like the dogs are taking dad's time, and maybe not that they resented the dogs, but like they weren't obsessed with the dogs, right?
Right.
As they got a little bit older, all of a sudden, like, maybe that would be something cool to do. Uh, we're at the point now, 11, 12 years old. We did a breeding earlier this year with one of my males to a friend's female. It was a really, really nice dog. And I actually took three female. I took the three females out of the litter because I kind of wanted to lock it down. So one of them is mine, one of them is Brett's, and one of them is Cody's.
Mhm.
And they have full responsibility for those dogs. I say full responsibility, like, well,
They're not
as much
driving
as you
them,
can.
they're not
Like,
putting them in a bike basket and driving them to the vet, but
no,
around the
but they
house.
are.
Yeah.
I am not training those dogs. They are responsible for the training of those dogs. Feeding, like sometimes I just do group feeding, but frequently they're responsible for feeding them.
Yeah.
The Brett has his like sleeping on his bed at night. I think they just turned 7 months old, so his sleeps on his bed at night. The other one sleeps in a crate next to Cody's bed. Like they've kind of I told my wife it's like their first girlfriends, you know, and hopefully their last ones too. But they I mean they really have like latched onto these puppies, and they come. I'm not pushing them to train their dogs, but they come to me and they're like, what should I be working on now? And
Right.
you know, they really are the drivers behind it now because they want to have a nice dog. The other thing that's been really cool is, you know, they took hunter safety last year. They've started actually carrying guns. Well, the older one we went out to South Dakota and pheasant hunted. He shot a handful of birds out there, and he's gone grouse hunting with me. And they really started to see like how valuable the dogs are for hunting. And
Right.
now they have this like they want to have their own nice hunting dog, right? And
Right.
they've got these little puppies at home, but they love the idea of next fall being able to go out to South Dakota and have their own dog that they train and be able to go walk behind their dog and shoot a bird and have it retrieve it for them. So but they also know that it's a process. So, you know, in a world of instant gratification where I want a dog that finds birds and retrieves them to hand, they because they've seen it, they understand that like there's a lot of things that have to happen to get to that point. So
Yep.
they're asking me today, like last night we were out in the shop doing sessions with puppies, and they're like, okay, what should I be working on now? I tell them what to work on, but I'm not doing it for them. I'm giving them the ownership. That seems to be working really well. Like I think if I just was training the puppy and I let them try it once or twice and like, okay, now I'm going to train it some more. Now you guys try it again. That there's no ownership there, ownership of the process or ownership of the result.
Right.
And that who cares? I mean, for adults or kids, like if you don't own something, if you're not in charge, if you're not responsible
Mhm.
for the outcome, like
Right.
who cares about the process then, right? But
Yeah.
but in this case, like they know what they want for an end result. They know that they're responsible for the process. That creates a driver to be more consistent with their training.
Right.
And also, you know, a lot of times I hear families or a dad who's like, well, you know, I've got three kids at home, so of course my dog is like, you know, having sticks thrown all the time for it to retrieve, and like the kids just don't listen. The kids don't listen, you know. Yeah,
Right.
they might when I'm home, I think they do an okay job, but I know when I'm at work, they're just ruining the dog, right? Have you've heard that before?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard it so many times.
I've heard it blamed on wives too.
Yeah, yes.
Or husbands.
Yeah,
Or husbands.
yeah, yes. So so why is that? It's because the kid doesn't care about the process. That's why the kid is ruining the dog while you're at work. It's because the kid doesn't care about the process. He doesn't understand what the end game is, and he doesn't understand how today's training affects the end result. So
Right.
I have tried to do a good job with my kids of saying, here's what we want that dog to do eventually. Here's why what we're doing today is important.
Right.
So they start to see the big picture. They understand the process. Then the kid doesn't want to cheat. You know, he doesn't want to be like, oh, dad's not looking, I'm going to do this with the dog.
Right.
Like,
Right.
like they understand, well, we want we want Fido to be this dog here in a year.
Mhm.
So it's really, really important to do it this way today. And I think my kids have bought into that. Like they're a little bit scared to do it the wrong way. I have no fear that they're going to go out and do something like that. They're going to go rogue on me and do something that is going to ruin that puppy. Like they are being so careful to try to do it exactly how I tell them.
Right.
Because they want that end result so bad. So
Yeah.
I think that's been, looking at it like waiting until they have the desire and then slowly feeding that desire and then now giving them responsibility, but they don't have that responsibility until they have the big picture in mind. Like
Right.
it's worked for us anyway. Like I mean, check back in 5 years, but I feel like I'm on a track right now where 5 years from now, I'm going to have 2 or 3 hunting buddies who are going to have nice, well-trained dogs that are going to be a heck of a lot of fun to hunt with, to be honest. Like that's the path that I feel like we're on.
Well, I told you I had correlations. So I remember when I told my wife I wanted to become a judge for NAVDA, and I had to travel out of the area, across the country on my own dime, take time away from the family because I had to do that. My wife was a great wife, probably rolled her eyes and like, I could sure use some help this weekend. Like when you were,
she might have also been happy you were leaving, but carry on.
Right. Because I'm not adding much to the household, but when I came home and let's say I went hunting, like the kids wanted to see what I brought home, right? They didn't ask to go hunting, but when they were older, like me and some friends were out shooting, and I said, "No, you're not big enough to hold a gun yet." And then we had twin daughters. One of them was way bigger than the other one. She got to shoot first. The other one couldn't hold a shotgun for another year, So there was a lot of that no, but it was all from them asking over and over. So I might get more emails on you than you about this because and I'm not saying this isn't going to work for people, but I know of people and I've seen it on Instagram. They've got a baby in a backpack and they're trying to squeeze their hunt in, and earphones on the baby.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I don't know if that works or not. I mean,
I don't either. I guess we'll know.
Maybe those guys maybe they have it figured out. And I do like the fact that they're passionate and that the kids are becoming a part of that person's life instead of them changing their life.
Right. It's better than sitting inside. But I don't think walking around with a gun and a baby in a backpack is the best idea in the world. I'm just,
I never did it. I'll just say I never did it.
And nobody did it to me because they didn't have baby backpacks. We had. I told this to my kids the other day, and then I want to get into the event you're going to be doing here. Oh God, what did I just say? Oh God, it went right out of my head. What did I just say?
The backpacks, carrying kids around.
So I've got 3 daughters. They've all got children now, right? Anywhere from a year to a 6-year-old. So I got a big span of 5 years. And they have what's called a pack and play when they go somewhere. They got it's basically a place to put the kid down. And I told them, I said, all the kids in the 50s and 60s were crate trained. And they go, what do you mean? I said, we had what was called a playpen. The pack and play is a takeoff but it was a 4-foot square wooden jailhouse. And that's where when our moms weren't with us, we were in there. All of our toys were in there. We didn't, the front room wasn't the toy room. The playpen was, that's like we were crate trained. And they couldn't let us out, right? We were going to get hurt. And I tell my kids, I'm like, I said, and I love my grandkids to pieces, and it's fun watching them do stuff. But like they're running around the house in circles. Like we just weren't allowed to run around the house in circles.
Yeah.
We could run around our playpen,
Yeah.
If my mom's neighbor came over with her kid, my best friend Ruth, there was 2 of us in a playpen.
Yeah.
That was it.
Double it up.
And then when we were big enough, we were out in the yard,
Yeah, so it's always interesting to like it's easy to romanticize the past and
Yeah.
be like, well, this is how it used to be, and this is
Right.
how so that's how it should be today. Uh there's probably more serial killers that came out of your generation. Maybe
Well,
that had something to do with
there's a couple.
I don't but I so yeah, like I always try to look at it like, well, just because it's how it used to be done doesn't mean that like it's better. Like things can improve.
Right.
But I think you always want to take the best from every generation. Like, so was it good that when I was a kid, I had to wear rubber boots pheasant hunting in January? And I think I still have, I seriously have a cold foot issue now. Like at night, almost every night I have a hot rice bag that I put on my feet because they're like ice cubes down there. And I think that is tied into like pheasant hunting in single digit temps in rubber boots that I got from the farm store and like having to shake my toes out when I got home because they froze off. Right. I don't think that was necessarily a good thing. I think it's good that today kids have access to like boots with insulation. Like that's a novel and really cool thing. So like, we don't need to go back to everything, but I think it's good to say like, okay, why were maybe more kids into hunting back in the day than they are today? And are there things that we can pull from that? But what are the good things about today? Like there are good things about today. Today's not all negative.
Right.
Change is not necessarily a bad thing, but there's certainly some things where like the number one babysitter in America today is video games, right? Like that's not it. There is no study out there that would say that that's a good thing for these kids. Like it's just not. But in spite of all the studies that say that it is a bad thing for a child's development, it's still the number one babysitter that's out there. Like so it's pretty easy to say like that's not a good thing from this generation. And yeah, it was definitely better, more wholesome. I think it made people more creative, more adventurous, like to be out doing things when they were a kid. Like when you were a kid, you got on your bike and rode all over the place, and you went and played pickup games of football and basketball, and like in the neighbor's driveway, and or went down to the creek and stuff. And like those are good things for development. Sitting in front of a computer or a TV for 4 hours a day playing video games is not really good for development on any level, unless you want to be a fighter pilot and then supposedly like being good with the game controller. But most of these kids aren't going to be fighter pilots. You know what?
There was a lot of good fighter pilots in World War I and World War II.
Yeah. I mean, we all see Top Gun. He wasn't playing video games. Come on.
Eddie Rickenbacker, right? World War I.
Right. So I don't, you don't just, you can't paint with a broad brush and say, well, things were better 40 years ago and we should copy that.
Right.
But I do think you just have to be smart. Like, okay, am I being lazy? Like letting a video game raise your kid is you being lazy. And like people don't want to hear that, but like that's the honest truth. Like that's being lazy as a parent if you allow the TV to babysit your kid for hours and hours. It just is. And like if you think you can have it both ways and let the TV babysit your kid all the time, and then every once in a while you're going to pull the kid away from it, and the kid's supposed to like love hanging out with you and love like participating in your sport, like likely ain't happening. Like you can't really have your cake and eat it too. Is that the expression? Like, so if you want your kid to be a part of your life, you're probably gonna like have to get off your butt and do things, like so yeah, I think we can say like 30 years ago was probably better in that regard because the technology wasn't out there to distract kids. On the other hand, 30 years ago, dads worked all the time and didn't have time for their kids, and that wasn't a good thing either. So
now they get maternity leave.
I never got that. I should have had
I never
had a year off of work with maternity leave. I worked on the days my kids were born sometimes. Sorry, go ahead.
You got to show up at the hospital and go, oh, look, it's born.
Yeah. Yep. Back to work.
But you told me that you got a call, I think, from Carl at Purina. And you and the whole family, or is it just you and the kids, are going to be
to be decided yet. I'll have at least 2 or 3 kids with me. maybe the whole family, but the kids will be involved.
Tell everybody what that event is, because
Yeah, so it's the NWTF convention. It's in Nashville. I think it's like, I mean, check the dates. Don't go off of this, but it's like February 15th through 18th or something like that. It's right around that time period. They're going to have dog demos happening. I think Wild Rose is doing some, and then I'll be doing some. And I'm going to incorporate the kids with it. I kind of like, it seems like dog demos are a dime a dozen, like, but dog demos with kids, maybe people would find beneficial. So we're going to try. I don't have like a whole outline yet, but it's starting to formulate in my head. And I kind of want to do something where we're going to have hopefully 4 different dogs at 4 different ages. So like one that will be about 3 months old, one that will be 8 months old, and then like a 14-month-old, and then like a 2-year-old dog. So kind of like, here's like a 5-year-old kid, here's like a 10-year-old kid, here's a 15-year-old kid, and here's a young adult, right? So dogs at all different stages. And then I'm going to have the kids. One of those dogs is mine, so I'll be doing stuff with her. But then the kids are going to do stuff with their dogs, and I'm hoping that I can kind of. It's gonna. It might be a little bit chaotic. It's not going to be like a highly polished performance, but I also don't want it to be that. Like I want it to be like, here's how. Here's how with this kid, like we can help this kid, like maybe show how to interact with the kid, and then the kid's interacting with the puppy, and like it's not going to be perfect, but like dog training isn't supposed to be perfect. Dog training is supposed to be learning, not perfection. So, well, last night we were doing this session out in the shop. I mentioned that earlier, and the kids, like you could tell they're a little bit they're not nervous, but they think that like, well, my dog has to be perfect. So you can see they feel a little bit of pressure in training right now because I think the dog needs to be perfect when it goes up there on that stage. And so I told them, I was like, look, like the dog isn't going to be perfect and it doesn't need to be perfect. And like, you're not going to be perfect and you don't need to be perfect. Like people are going to learn a lot when I start yelling at you. And they know that I'm joking, obviously, but there is a little bit of truth to that. Like if it doesn't need to go perfect, like this could be, come and watch if you're there, if you're in the area. I think I've never been there before, but I hear it's a really cool convention. So if you're there, come watch our demo, and you can watch like kids get taught on how to teach dogs, and then you can watch those kids teach dogs. And
I mean, that's a great place for the parents to bring their kid and like watch. And it's not like watch what kids can do. It's more like watch what some kids do, not what they can do. It's what that family does.
This isn't like some freak show. It's not going to be like the kid that can do a Rubik's Cube standing on his head in 10 seconds. Like this is like normal.
Right.
Like normal, like chance, this is just.
There's a good chance one of your kid's dogs is going to do something, go off the stage and run down the aisle.
It could happen.
But could happen. But that's what I think too with dogs. Laughing is just as important as everything else. And if they see that humor in that, it's not embarrassing. It's just like, they're going to tell that story till the day they die. How dog jumped off the stage at the NWTF dog demo and
went gave somebody a kiss.
Right. And then, or jumped up in somebody else's.
And it's not gonna. It honestly won't be bad dog work. Like they've done a really good job with their puppies. It's just when you take an 11-year-old kid and an 8-month-old puppy and put them in front of a crowd, like they're not supposed. That puppy wouldn't be perfect for me either. Right. So dog training is kind of like it's like sharpening a knife. Like if that knife is really dull at the start, you're just like you're not trying to like put the final edge on at the start. Like it's rough, you're just trying to take some off. You're just trying to and like same thing with the puppy. We don't need a fine edge today at 8 months old. Like if I took a pup or one of my kids took an 8-month-old puppy on the stage and that puppy was perfect and was doing handling drills and a perfect delivery and like everything was perfect, good chance that puppy's going to wash out. And like a year from now, it won't be doing the demo anymore because it was too much too early. So I think it'll be, I think hopefully educational and enjoyable to watch a kid with a puppy that is honestly where it should be as an 8-month-old puppy, like doing some cool things, but not perfect.
Well, I'm
So
gonna tell you, if I'm looking up at my 4-month calendar, and unless I miss something, I'm gonna be probably somewhere on the sidelines watching you and the kids up there on
that'd be great. It's like 6 weeks from today, I think.
yeah,
So it's
I
coming
think
up.
that's cool. Tell me a little the hunting trip. You took your oldest boy out to South Dakota?
I did, yep. And we hunted private land. I have a friend who has a lease out there, and every year I go out and hang out with him when we go hunting. So
Right.
we hunted a little bit of public, but it was mostly private. Um, and yeah, it was good. Like I shoot a lot of birds in training. So
Right.
for me, like I don't know, is shooting a bird in the field different than shooting? For some reason, it is. For some reason, it feels different. But it's typically if there's birds there, like it's not too difficult for me to get my limit. For my
Right.
son, it was his first time pheasant hunting,
Yeah.
and it was a little bit it was a little bit tougher. So at the start, I got my limit, and then I walked with him for like 3 or 4 more hours, and
Right.
he got his limit like right at the end. He shot his last bird, and they know it's not we don't get the limit every day, and it's not about getting a limit for them. But at the same time, he's really driven. So
Right.
I'm trying to call it quits after we walked 10 miles, and he's like, no, like what are you talking about, Dad? Like, well, can you just stay in the truck and I'll go? Like okay. So uh so yeah, it was a lot of fun. And for the dogs, like getting out on wild birds, like when you start doing the math, like okay, if you're paying $12 or $15 or sometimes more for a pheasant in training, which I don't use pheasants very often at all, but that's about the going rate. To go out and have a dog flush 15 or 20 pheasants in training would like put you in the poorhouse, right?
Right.
So to go out there and have all the dogs getting multiple flushes, hens, roosters,
Right.
it's also cool. It's a lot more, I say realistic. It is the real thing. So of course it's realistic. To have hens that don't get shot at, the dog
Right.
does great work on this bird and puts it up and it flies away. Well, that wouldn't happen in training.
Right.
It
Right.
doesn't matter if it's a hen or a rooster, or to have multiple flushes, or to have 20 birds get up in the air at one time, and the
Yeah.
dog is supposed to stay under control through that time. So, and then also to have like old scent and new scent, and you're following the dog trails out a bird, but then the bird's not there because it flushed up ahead. Like there's a lot of things that happen in wild bird hunting that could never happen in training,
Right. Right.
and it's a real fun time to go out and just grind for 3 days. I say grind like it's not work, it's fun, but for the dog to like grind and like
Right.
get
Yeah.
beat up
At home,
and
you don't push it for hours on end, but on a hunting trip, yeah,
right,
you push
you
it.
do.
How many
It's
cockers do you put down when you let's say you and your boy are hunting or with another friend? Do you put multiple dogs down?
I typically only run one at a time.
Okay.
Right now I have a lot of younger dogs, so early on
That makes sense. Yeah.
they so and and when I had older dog, like I lost over the last couple of years, have been a little bit rough losing older dogs. But when I had the older dogs, I might have two of them walking at heel and then hunt one, and
Oh,
then call that one in, and then I just rotate them. So as I'm going along, I just keep rotating the dogs. So there's always they maybe hunt for 10 minutes and then come in. The next one goes out, hunts for 10 minutes, comes in.
they get
Now with the
that. They get used to that and come right back to heel. And I I am
yeah
I am such not a flushing dog trainer, right? I've had so much fun
yeah
with my flusher, my cocker, but I can't even imagine getting her to walk along my side while another dog does the work yet. It's not in my I want it, but
yeah.
I don't even know how you do it. It's
Yeah, I mean,
embarrassing.
a lot of it's expectation. Like they're not going to do it like because they want
Oh,
to
no,
at
no,
the start, but like eventually, like, well, why do my dogs sit to the flush? Not because they want to.
no. You taught
It's
him.
because like it's the expectation. So that's what
Right,
we do.
right,
But with the younger dogs, like I don't want to have a 15-month-old dog out there hunting and then have to call like this is a process. So this year was more one dog at a time. Try to do a little bit shorter hunts.
right,
You try to space it out anyway. Like
right.
I don't want a 15-month-old dog going so long that it starts to like get burned out. You know,
Right.
like I want them to be semi-fresh when I put them back in the box.
Right.
Um, so
But let me ask you this: um, so let's say when you had older dogs that were all under control,
yeah.
right? Do you just know they're ready for the field to hunt like that? Or even at home in the summertime, will you practice one dog at heel and one dog flushing birds? Do you practice that at home too?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, this is something I've always said. Like, if you want your dog to do it in the field, like
Right.
while hunting,
Yeah.
it better be able to do it at home. You
Okay.
know, like it doesn't matter what it is. Like, you want that dog to deliver to hand,
Right.
but it won't deliver to hand in your backyard. But somehow you think it's going to magically do that while you're out pheasant hunting. Like, you're high. Like,
Right.
you're crazy. It doesn't. It doesn't. But you see it over and over. Like,
So,
you know, the dog won't come when it's called in the field. But it won't come when it's called in your backyard. Why would it come out in the field? Like
right.
it doesn't make any. So that's a principle I'm really hard and fast on. If you want the dog to do it in a highly charged situation, out in the field with birds and you know a non-sterile environment, it better be able, at a very minimum, it better to do it in a sterile environment at home.
Right.
But the time to ask for something new is not while you're out
Not while
hunting.
you're hunting.
Like
No, no.
hunting should be just proofing that your training
Right.
is there,
Right.
but the training happens at home.
How long have you like I never pushed Vivi very much. Um and I took her to North Dakota and I'm not saying it's not the right dog. If you know the area real good, you can kind of target Sharpies and Huns, but still it could
Yeah,
be out a lot of miles some days. Do you do you ever take your dogs out for like the prairie birds? Or I know it's a flusher, I feel is a much better
yeah,
pheasant dog and a grouse dog. Would you take
yeah.
her on a 3 hour prairie walk?
Well, yeah, for some of them for sure. So
When they're
I
older. Yeah.
I yeah, I mean full disclosure, I've quail hunted with cockers in Texas.
Yep.
Yeah, with a bunch of pointers. I've hunted Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota. I've not made it to Montana yet. I've not made it to Wyoming. And you know, the Dakotas, I've been more on the eastern side where it's more pheasants
Right.
predominantly.
Right.
But even grouse hunting, like I'll go on I think last Saturday I went out with my boys and I think we walked 8 miles. So you know through the woods, like that's a long haul, and I think I had 4 dogs with me, so I rotated them. So each dog I walked, you know, roughly a couple of them I probably walked 3 miles with each, and then 2 of them I walked a mile each. Some some of them are gonna have no problem, like particularly the females. I think female with a lot of drive, it could hunt it for a long time, and it's gonna go. The males, especially like the bigger males, they'll get tired out a little bit faster. It's
Yeah.
just in my experience, like somebody's gonna be like, no, my big male, like he'll go forever. But honestly, like the hardest hunting cockers I've ever had are little females, like
Wow.
25 pounds or less.
Yeah.
They will go a long time because they're not hauling a lot of weight around. I mean,
Right.
the analogy I always use is who wins the Boston Marathon every single year.
Not
It's a 6'6" bodybuilder, right? Like, no, it's the exact opposite. It's a five
skinny.
foot tall, 100-pound guy.
It's a skinny
Like
guy.
why?
Yeah.
Why? And he's little. He's not even tall. He's little because
Right.
he's not having to move as much mass.
Yeah.
So same thing with dogs. Like the big heavy dogs, like yeah, they might be able to pound cover for a while, but they're gonna wear out a little bit faster, sometimes a lot faster than a smaller, thinner dog that isn't having to. Now you have to have a good muscle to weight ratio. Like we're not talking like a frail little dog, but
No,
like
and you got to have
um
a lot of walks, and they can't that can't be their first
yeah.
walk.
Although you know it's crazy. I went grouse hunting with well many times I guess, but I have a dog named Gandhi. She is 7 years old. She had a litter of puppies that are now I think 9 weeks old. And 2 weeks ago I took her hunting. So she had 7-week-old puppies at home. I didn't really. I mean, I took her for runs during her pregnancy and some after, but like she hadn't been trained. I mean,
Right.
she's a 7-year-old dog. Doesn't She's fully trained,
Yeah.
quote unquote, fully trained, but she knows the ropes. That dog hunted. She'll just go. Like she had no conditioning. The other dogs had been hunting in the Dakotas, whatever. There was not a dog with us, and I was with a buddy. I think we had 8 dogs with us total. There was not a dog with us that like covered more ground and would go longer than that dog. So it had nothing to do with like conditioning for her.
Right.
That's just
desire.
drive, and some of that is just physically gifted. Like if you look at her from early age, you can tell it's interesting. Her rib cage extends. She has a really big rib cage. It goes farther back on her spine than like I had a litter mate, and they would stand next to each other, and you could see her rib cage went back farther and was bigger, and the other one had a smaller rib cage. This female with the big rib cage, like best. I've done this to her multiple times, I guess. And I think about it, I've kind of abused her. But I ran her in a field trial in North Dakota when she had 7-week-old puppies at home. And it got really hot that day. She was in the 3rd series. So in a spaniel trial, there's 3 series.
Mhm.
You get called back to the second, and then a few get
Right.
called back to the third. So she made it. It's like a 55 dog trial, and she was one of like 12 or 15 that got called back to the third. So she'd had a pretty good day. By the time the third series happened, it was 90 degrees out and dry, and dogs were struggling. Like we didn't have anything go down, but like it was after they ran, it was like like they don't do that on video. Cut that part of the video out.
Well,
But they okay, good. But they were really struggling. So I take her out there and I run her, and she's just cruising. She puts up a bird. They shoot it. It's probably a 70-yard retrieve, so pretty long one. Nails the retrieve, comes back. We carry on. Another one gets another long retrieve, brings it back. I put the leash on her, and I'm walking her back, and I get back to the parking lot, and a guy was like, one of the other trialers was like, "Didn't she just run?" And yeah, she just had a nice series. And he's like, she's not even panting. Like she looks like you just took her out of the box. And so like she's really a physically gifted dog that way.
Right.
All that to say, like it really is going to depend if I'm going to go hunt out west. Like when I get out to Montana, yep, I'm going to hunt the cockers because frankly, I have a Springer and I have cockers, and that's all I got. So, you got to run what you brung. But there's certain ones that there's certain ones that I know are going to do a better job than others. Like some of my small females that are pretty lean and have a little bit of leg to them. Like they're going to go longer. They're going to cover more ground.
Right. Yeah. So some of it is just basically confirmation of inside and
for
outside,
sure.
Inside and outside confirmation. A little bit.
Yep.
A little bit more lung space, a little more ribby, a little bouncier, something. Yeah.
Yep. So drive and confirmation are huge for that.
I think I should have done more with her, and because she reminds me of what you're describing, and I have this wire-haired Vizsla right now. I love him to pieces. His personality is just, I love this dog, right? But if it's anywhere near 60 degrees,
he's done.
57.5 degrees, I get about a half an hour out of it. Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, damn you. I mean, I had a black wire hair on a sunny day that could go for hours, right? And this lady, but it's probably just something in his structure. He's probably got small lungs, and I take him out on a cold, rainy day. It's to go, right? Right?
Yeah. Yep.
I should, but I was a little afraid to hunt her because she's so fast, so energetic. I'm like, oh, she's going to burn herself out in 15 minutes. And I learned my lesson.
They'll learn to pace themselves. Like they're not, if you come, or when people come watch dogs in training, they're like, wow, look at that. But how long can they do that for? Like, well, frankly, like they're not going to be able to keep up that pace for miles and miles, but they'll settle in, they'll start to hunt objectives more, but the good ones aren't going to shut down. The good ones are always going to be out to the front, just like just like a pointer, whatever, like out to the front, right? I don't need you.
They're always trying.
I don't need you. Yeah. I don't need you looking for birds at my feet, and I don't need you looking for birds behind me. Like stay out to the front and hit objectives. But but yeah, the good ones are still going to be, they're still moving the whole time. I mean, they're still out pushing. And, if I think Breeze was like that, like I called her my black wolf, like we go out and she was a predator. I mean, she would never quit. Like you better always be watching her because she's always hunting. Gandy's like that. I have this female springer right now she's a real small springer. She's probably, I would guess, probably about 33 pounds. And she's the same way, like just always to the front, like refuses to just like quit, like she might slow down, but she's always out there.
Right.
And in fact, you'll see like when she starts to get tired and maybe a little bit frustrated because we're not finding birds mile after mile, like usually those dogs will get bigger instead of smaller.
Right.
Like some of those heavy males are like, there's no birds here. Like it looks real good next to you.
Right.
Yeah. But then you get the ones who are like, I'm not finding anything. I got to do something different.
Yeah.
And start pushing more, right? Like I'm going to have to run a little bit bigger. Yeah. And you'll see that like Breeze was like that. The Springer Shaney's like that. Gandy's like that. I do have a little male right now who I tell you, like, he's my little female male. Like he looks like a female. You'll be like, oh, she's cute. Yeah. But it's a he. He hunts more like a female. But he's lighter structured. He doesn't have the heavy bones to haul around. He's got cleaner lines.
Well, someday, I don't know how it'll happen, but I should go hunting with someone with well-trained cockers. So maybe it'll, spur me to try it. But I don't mind hunting with her, just me and her, because her range is very adequate, right?
Okay.
And if she does get out on something, I'm not going to run, I'm just going to call her back a little bit. But I'm totally guilty of not having her steady. Like when a bird goes up, he's going to give it 100-yard run and waste energy. And I'm not doing her any service with that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. How old is she now?
She'll be 2 now in January.
Okay.
Right? And I'm tickled. Like I said, I've got to get another one just because I could see myself saying, you know what? I might have one pointing dog. I might have 3 cockers someday. It's just easier. I don't want to, it's really not, but there is something about a cocker that.
The nice thing about a flushing dog, like if you don't need it to be steady, like if you don't have that training objective, you can shoot pretty much everything that bird or that dog puts up. My buddies that have pointers, and all the BS for the first couple of years of like, well, we couldn't shoot that bird because it didn't handle it right. Couldn't shoot that bird. Couldn't shoot, oh my word! Like you guys are so patient, like just letting birds fly away. Right. With the nice thing with the flusher, like as long as they're in range,
right?
Like you pretty much can shoot that bird. Now, if you want the dog to be steady, then you shouldn't be shooting birds when the dog is breaking. But and then so like I tell people, the best way to keep a dog in range, a flusher, this one.
Yeah.
You just got to be a better shot.
And then it's in range.
That keeps them in. Then you keep them in range that way.
The guy who says I need my flusher at 20 yards might not be that good of a shot.
Yeah, exactly. They're not always the best dog for guiding. No. When you got a bunch of bad shots out there, like pointers can be great for that because we walk in, kick the bird up, and you do have to be, especially like if you're hunting wild birds with a dog that is covering ground. Like, it'll test your shooting a little bit because you got birds that are getting up at 35, 40 yards. So now you're shooting them at 55.
You gotta be, that gun's gotta be shouldered like Matt Dillon in a gunfight on the street.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that bad. You have more time than you think, but yeah, like this isn't like kick the bird up and shoot it at 15 yards like you see on Instagram.
Right. Well, listen, so I'm going to look up the dates for the NWTF. Are you going to be just doing this on like the main day? Usually these things are 3 days. You're going to be there Saturday or Sunday or what?
It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday that I'll be there and doing 2 demos a day. I have no idea what time, but I know it's 6 demos total over those 3 days.
All right. I'll look up the dates and I'm going to get to see you down there then.
That'd be awesome. That'd be great.
I got nothing going on, and I've always wanted to see the wild turkey. I've heard it's a big show. It's not really just
Yeah.
turkey hunting; it's a lot of stuff.
No.
Um,
Apparently it's cockers and kids too. So
you know what? That's going to be the name of this episode.
no, it is. It actually. Oh, okay. Well, that's the name of my demo. Is cockers and kids.
Cockers and kids. That's going to be the name of this episode, Jordan. That's great. All right, listen. I'll
Cool.
let you get going. You got stuff to do. I got stuff to do. It's good catching up, and I'm going to see you in Nashville.
Yeah.
Some of the listeners come down and watch this.
Stop by and say hi. Yeah, pet a dog. Get jumped
That's
on
right.
and licked by a cocker.
Sounds good, buddy.
So, thanks, Ron. Really enjoyed this. Really good catching up. Appreciate
All right.
it.
Good talking to you. See you, bud.
All right, bye.